Thursday, 1994, True Lies opens in theaters.
Sorry about this.
My husband.
And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to episode 247 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Monday afternoon with me here in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Today marks the 30th anniversary since James Cameron's True Lies opened in theaters. Now, to kind of put you back in time a little bit to not so much history and culture of 1994, but to kind of understand the expectation for this movie and what went into expectation for this movie. Now, James Cameron had made Terminator, 1984, the sequel to Ridley Scott's Alien called Aliens, 1986. He made The Abyss in 1989, which is somewhat problematic because he wasn't able to release his movie. He had a nearly 3-hour cut, which, to call it his preferred cut, it was his cut. It's not a preferred cut. But Rupert Murdoch, he more or less told Jim he had to cut a half hour. We can't have a summer movie going 3 hours. Big guy. So The Abyss didn't do as well with critics or audiences as I believe it would have if it had simply been released, because the full version of The Abyss is as good as anything that James Cameron has done to this day. But Terminator, The Aliens, The Abyss, then Terminator 2, which was 520 plus million 33 years ago, a massive box office hit. And James Cameron, right around the time that True Lies was being put through production, that he was making it, his next film was in preparation. He was going to make a Spider-Man movie. And, well, obviously that didn't happen. The Spider-Man project didn't take place till 2002 with Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire. But James Cameron's master plan for Spider-Man, it was called a scriptman. He wrote like a treatment/screenplay, about 30 to 40 pages, of how he saw a Spider-Man origin story going. And while he was making True Lies, he had it in his head. That's what he was doing next. He wasn't thinking about Titanic as True Lies came out and hit big in 1994. So that's from the perspective of the filmmaker, James Cameron, whose obviously best days were incredibly still in front of him because of the success that Titanic became. But if we look at his star, his guy, his buddy, his BFF, Arnold Schwarzenegger, now they worked together in Terminator and Terminator 2, and now they were coming back with True Lies. Arnold was the biggest star in Hollywood as of Terminator 2, and probably even before that. I feel like the success of Twins put Arnold on top of the mountain. And the really kind of shocking success of Total Recall, which was much brainier science fiction than people were expecting from Arnold. They figured it would just be blowing shit up real good and one-liners. And it does that. The genius of Total Recall, it does blow shit up real good. And Arnold, see you at the party, Richter. I mean, one-liners like The Running Man. What happened? He had to split. How about a light? Total Recall was a lot more than just funny one-liners and shit blowing up real good. It is cerebral science fiction, mind-blowing science fiction. Dare I say the kind of science fiction that a James Cameron would appreciate. Now, Terminator 2 is more blunt, force, trauma. It's cerebral, but it's much more direct. It's not mindfuck the way Total Recall. Even now, I've seen the movie how many times in 34 years, and I'm still not well, is it a dream? Did it really happen? Beats the shit out of me. The success of Terminator 2, without question, and the way that Arnold was able to connect with Gen Xers and young boomers pretty much adopted him. And there was a whole generation of people that knew Arnold Schwarzenegger as a bodybuilder. They would be a lot older because he won his first Mr. Olympia in 1970, 54 years ago. If you were an Arnold Schwarzenegger fan when you were in your teens, I'm sorry, you're retirement age. You're well into retirement age. But after Terminator 2 and its incredible runaway success, and the thing with Arnold, and everybody agrees with this, he is a master self-promoter, but he really loves the movie business. And you would think that it goes without saying, but it doesn't necessarily. But the thing with Arnold, among so many others that wouldn't automatically come to mind when people ponder his career, when it comes to marketing, and has come to marketing, he's always wanted to have a voice and be involved. Now, there's a lot of controversy a number of years ago with The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, with Black Adam, where he kind of went over certain people's heads and he rubbed people the wrong way. In the case of Arnold, he wanted to take part in anything connected to the movie that might increase its visibility and its box office. So, specific example that a lot of Gen Xers are going to remember, and it may not have been in their head until right now when I'm about to bring it up. Guns N' Roses was as big a band as there was at the time. Axl Rose, everybody loved him. And Guns N' Roses had a song they were preparing for their Use Your Illusion. That was the name of the album, Use Your Illusion 1. They dropped 2 albums on the same day, which is fucking insane. But the idea was, even though this particular song has nothing to do with Terminator 2, but they were going to use it on the soundtrack. When your bitch stops rocking and your cocaine's gone, you get nothing done. That's the hook. You could be mine. Doesn't really have much to do with robots fighting for the future and the fate of humanity. But that was going to be on the soundtrack, and Arnold was approached. Hey, we'd like you to be in the music video, and you'll get to meet Axl Rose and Slash and all the guys from Guns N' Roses. Are you okay with that? And I said, of course. So the music video aired before the movie Terminator 2 was released. And when I tell you, it wasn't as big as Michael Jackson's Thriller 7 years earlier, but that video, MTV, when MTV used to play music videos, there were already people complaining by 1991 they weren't playing that many videos. But that video, when I say it was in heavy rotation. So that's the kind of personality Arnold was. He took part. He is fucking great in that video. And the way they put the T-800 and throw him in there, fantastic. And the clips from the movie got us even more excited to see it. After Terminator 2, Arnold had to pick of a number of projects. He kept passing on Sergeant Rock. He was convinced the script wasn't ready. And there was a film where he was going to play the Tooth Fairy, which Dwayne Johnson ended up doing. He didn't think the script was quite there. He ended up doing Last Action Hero. Now, history tells us Last Action Hero massively underperformed at the box office. It just about turned a profit if you add in the overseas and the ancillaries and whatnot. But for the time, it was a big disappointment. We all knew that Jurassic Park was going to be the biggest film of 1993, as almost everyone was sure that Terminator 2 was going to be the biggest movie of the summer. When Arnold went on with Carson, when he went on with Letterman, when he went on with Arsenio Hall, he repeated that line. The biggest movie of the summer. I get to play a good Terminator. I kill less people in this movie than I did in the first one. It's just literally word for word. Arnold settled on Last Action Hero. He loved the script. And critics, some of them got it. Some of them got it. And said, this is next level shit. I don't think audiences are going to get it. And they were right. It underperformed. So, cliche though it may be, teaming up with James Cameron, again, was a safe choice. The guys had a good working relationship. Cameron knew how to push Arnold, but he didn't push him too hard. And Cameron has always been known as a taskmaster. There are stories from The Abyss. Ed Harris has been so diplomatic, but there are times where you get the feeling if Ed Harris saw him now, he would take a fucking swing at him. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, there were a lot of problems on the set of The Abyss. Well, not so much problems. The fact that Cameron told them ahead of time, welcome to my nightmare. Basically, I'm going to run every one of you motherfuckers into the ground. Remember the saying about Alfred Hitchcock? I never said that actors were like cattle. I said you treat them like cattle. Well, James Cameron in The Abyss treated his actors like underwater cattle. And there were a lot of people that were unhappy about that. Cameron wasn't going to fuck with Arnold like that, but he would make him do a lot of takes, and Arnold was not a fan of doing a ton of takes. Arnold, we're going to run it again. Jim, I'm a bodybuilder, not an actor. Also, direct quote, I'm a bodybuilder, not an actor. But Arnold needed True Lies. He needed to kind of get back on the horse, and it was very likely that it was going to be a huge box office hit. Now, I remember when the film was in preparation, I was excited. So I liked Last Action Hero. I didn't love it. My dad and I saw it opening night, and it was just okay. There were stretches of the film where even I was scratching my head, wondering, I don't get it. Why are they doing this? This is not really that interesting. Well, it's a film that has aged very, very well. And right now, you could go on YouTube, and there are movie reactors, young people usually in their 20s, 30s, maybe into their 40s, that did not see it 31 years ago and are picking it up for the first time, and they're saying, why was this not a big hit? This is at least comparable to Arnold's other ones, which we've seen, such as Predator, such as True Lies. Maybe it's not Terminator 2, but what is? It's comparable to Total Recall as far as entertainment value. But True Lies is a remake of a French action comedy called La Totale. And I have not seen it, but I remember reading about it, and the character in True Lies, Simon, played by the late, great Bill Paxton, the only man who was ever killed by an alien, a predator, and a Terminator. Spoiler alert, Hudson doesn't make it out of Aliens. The character he plays in Predator 2 doesn't make it out of Predator 2. And I think the 1984 Terminator bumps him off. Early in the, I need your clothes, your boots, that scene. Bill Paxton, it's just fucking great, man. What are we going to do? We're in some real pretty shit now, man. That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over. It's too bad he didn't get to say that in True Lies. But you can see what attracted both Arnold and James Cameron to the source material of La Totale. You have a guy who is basically an American James Bond with an Austrian accent, who has a full domestic existence and a cover of a computer job. It's kind of funnier now, but a regular, respectable, white-collar kind of a sales job. He's a globe-trotting super spy. The converse of this, or the contrapositive if you want to really get stupid, but the idea would be if you made a James Bond film, a Mission Impossible film, where Ethan Hunt's wife doesn't know that he's a globe-trotting super spy. Well, that's this movie. And when True Lies hit, the advance buzz was very strong. What I got out of it, and I wasn't on the internet yet, some of my friends were, but I hadn't quite gotten to even getting a dial-up modem. But the idea was the buzz. It's better than Last Action Hero. It's not as good as Terminator 2, but it's at least comparable to Predator and Total Recall, just in terms of what people were buzzing about. Completely different kind of movie. But Arnold had already made so many iconic, legendary, classic actioners that when the word came back that this one's really good, I was confident that the film was going to actually be good. The teaser trailer was fantastic. It's one of the best teasers I think ever made. And Arnold's Eraser, which was a couple of years later, is also a fantastic teaser. You can argue on that one, the teaser is better than the movie. Eraser's okay. It's 3 stars out of 4. Worth seeing. But I don't even think it's as good as The Running Man. True Lies, just for its craftsmanship, I have to put above The Running Man. And answer to a trivia question, here's a great trivia question. The Arnold Schwarzenegger movie that I have seen more than any other, The Running Man. Sorry, HBO used to run it all the time. Hey, Killian, Here's Sub-Zero! Now! Plane Zero! It was a real pain in the neck. My dad used to actually, that one line from Running Man, he had to split. Dad loved that. He had to split. Don't ask. If you haven't seen the movie, you got to watch it to understand why Arnold says he had to split and why it's a sort of immortalized line. True Lies got pretty good reviews from critics. And I remember the Daily News, and it was Jamie Bernard was the critic at the time. Now, you wouldn't think that a high-velocity R-rated action thriller would have been Jamie Bernard's cup of tea. I don't recall her being a critic who loved big action movies. I don't think she even liked Last Action Hero, and I don't remember her review or what she said of Terminator 2. But what she liked, the Jamie Lee Curtis character, Helen Tasker. And Jamie Lee was a little bit of an unconventional choice to play that part. But it was a movement if you ask me, in a good direction, that Arnold's spouse in the film was age appropriate. And I don't know, they kind of look good together. But she was a very unconventional choice. I remember being surprised. Wow, they went for Jamie Lee? Huh. Now, Jamie Lee had recently been in some big studio films. She did Forever Young with Mel Gibson and a very young Elijah Wood. That movie's not great. That's kind of science fiction, a little bit of time travel type stuff. It's not really time travel, but we'll call it time travel. It was okay. But I was always a Jamie Lee fan from, the days of Trading Places. So I was not upset that she was cast. I just thought it was curious casting. Jamie Bernard of the Daily News, giving the film the highest possible rating and recommendation, said, "I wasn't expecting another strong, badass female character as we got Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley in Aliens, where she's way tougher than she is in the original, almost inexplicably because she's in hypersleep, spoiler alert, for 57 years. But somehow she's reborn. She might as well be a Marine, even though she isn't. And then Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton, amazing in Terminator 2. Now, Helen Tasker is not that, but she is also no shrinking violet. And we see she actually has some skills that have not been put to good use until shit goes wrong in the story, and Helen has to kind of take on characteristics and traits of an actual spy herself. And she turns out to be really good at it. She has a natural talent for it. And this is not something that I was even aware of the first time I saw the movie. I was just entertained, and the moments where she was getting involved in the spy, skullduggery, I just thought were coincidental and accidental. I didn't see it as a sort of an actual master plan from the filmmaker. And James Cameron, he said a lot of weird stuff. Titanic, the acceptance speech where Warren Beatty was so incensed. What's wrong with this fucking guy? He was going to take a swing at him backstage for being an asshole. But James Cameron has always been aware and alert, and somebody who, not just as a token thing, but somebody who has always wanted to portray very, very strong, dynamic, three-dimensional female characters. And that's why when he commented on the original Wonder Woman in 2017, where he felt it didn't do enough, it's why his comments got traction, because this was a guy who had shown how to do it. If he thinks they didn't get there, you can say he's wrong, but he's not approaching it from a misogynistic perspective. He's approaching it from the perspective of a guy who made 2 movies where the main character was a woman, 3 movies, 2 Terminators, Terminator 2. And the character of Helen Tasker grows and develops from mousy, timid to don't fuck with her, Boris and Doris. So I saw True Lies with my dad and my sister. Jess really wasn't old enough to see it, but Dad was like, no, it's okay. And you know what? It was okay. It was rated R, not for nudity and sex, although there is some implied chicanery going on there. But it was rated R for the violence. And honestly, the themes are not really great themes. There is some stereotypical terrorist activity in this film, and a great actor, Art Malik. Art Malik, who plays the kind of big bad in this film. Now, Art Malik had appeared 7 years earlier with Timothy Dalton in my all-time favorite James Bond film, The Living Daylights. And the irony is he played a similar character who was just on the other side. In a, unfortunately, post-Taliban, post-Afghanistan or post-war-torn Afghanistan world, when you go back and revisit certain films, you start, at least I do, calculating, okay, what would this guy be part of? And if you go back to 1987's The Living Daylights, this is not an accidental thing in the movie. 007 is held in a kind of a brig in Afghanistan with Mariam Dabo's character. Wonderful performance by her. And that's a Bond film that has a real love story to it. I think it's fucking amazing. Dalton sells it, and so does she. But they're in a brig, and Art Malik, the actor who plays the bad guy in True Lies, he's in this brig with them. He's in this kind of makeshift jail in the middle of a war zone, essentially. And he just looks like a random guy who was just picked up. We don't know who he is. It turns out that he is very, very important and highly connected in Afghani politics. And watching the movie now, you say, okay, this guy would be part of what the United States referred to as the Northern Alliance. He was one of the good guys. Well, in True Lies, he plays one of the bad guys, and I don't need to go any further. Not something that I picked up on, but the years of experience, understanding, even on a surface level, the geopolitical arena, and how movies sometimes, you make a movie and you couldn't do it this way today. You couldn't make True Lies today. You would have to change it. And that's okay. I understand films are products of their time. I'll give you an example. So Martin Scorsese, when he finished Gangs of New York, the last shots of the film, this is not really a spoiler because the movie mostly takes place in the late 19th century. The last shots of the film show the skyline being built. And Martin Scorsese's ending was always the last shots were going to be the skyline, including the Twin Towers. And it was not really controversy. It wasn't like people were really angry, but there was discussion, because this is 2002 that the film came out. Martin had shot it all before 9/11. But he needed a lot of time to edit it. There was talk it was going to come out in 2001. And similar to what happened with Age of Innocence, which originally was earmarked for 1992 release, Marty needed more time to edit. He really needed more time because everything had to be just right. But with Gangs of New York, after 9/11, there was discussion. Nobody told Martin what to do, but he did not remove the towers from the last shots of the film. And I remember seeing him at the Oscars when they did a montage of the movie and the song that was nominated for Oscar, Hands That Built America by U2. And Martin was in his seat, he was crying. And I don't know why he was crying. He could have been crying because of the disaster, because of the terror attack. I don't know. But he wouldn't have done it that way if he had prepared the film 4 years later, is what I'm saying. So it is, to me, okay to make adjustments based on reality. It doesn't mean you're a sellout. And in the case of True Lies, me saying you couldn't do this movie exactly like this today, it's just because it's a different world now, 30 years later. You see hard reboots, soft reboots, and they reflect current times, unless a film is obviously set in the past. So True Lies tells a story of a globe-trotting super spy who appears on the surface to be a mild-mannered, not Daily Planet reporter, but a mild-mannered salesman for a computer company. But in fact, he's in a branch of government that is like above the CIA. They're called Omega Sector. And this is, I think, kind of humorous. When they were trying to figure out who to cast as the head of Omega Sector, in other words, this would be the top guy at the CIA director, but just a different organization, an even more secretive, covert organization. So James Cameron is trying to figure out, well, who can I cast? It has to be somebody who can believably stick his finger in Arnold Schwarzenegger's face and where Arnold looks intimidated. It has to be an actor of significant weight and gravitas. Well, Nicholson wasn't quite old enough to do that yet. I guess they could have gotten Redford. Yeah. And Arnold didn't want, he said, no, if I'm going to work with Clint, it's not going to be that. They ended up with Charlton Heston. I don't know, maybe Heston was always going to be the guy. I don't remember reading that. But Heston, it's not that big of a role, but he really nails it. And it is believable that Arnold would take abuse from him and not fire back. The level of respect is, he also has an eye patch. This guy has seen some shit and done some shit and been through some shit. I'm good here. I'm not going to challenge him. But it is ultimately a story of family. Surface level, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger as Harry Tasker trying to take down an international cabal of terrorists. That is what takes place in the diegetic world of the film, another film school phrase for all of you kids out there. But it is a story of family. It is a story of a family that appears to be on its way to fracturing, and they come together. I didn't understand 30 years ago why they were politicians. It's almost absurd, but there were politicians arguing about this film. And some politicians were saying, we shouldn't be making movies like this. And others were saying, well, wait a minute. Maybe some of the action stuff is objectionable, but this is a story of a family that coalesces. It's actually, as R-rated movies about terrorists go, fairly wholesome. Now, at age 20, I thought that argument was complete idiocy. I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? But as an older person with maybe a different appreciation of family, yeah. We don't want the kid to become wayward and retreat from the flock. We don't want Harry Tasker and Helen Tasker to split up. We don't want Arnold to start getting it on with Tia Carrere's character of an arms dealer. I'm not sure if she's an arms dealer or she's just basically, I think she's a middle person in the movie. Anyway, the film does send out a better message. I see it now than I thought. Unlike Terminator 2, it is not attempting to solve any larger issues. It's not trying to leave us with something imprinted like, if a machine can learn the value of human life, why the fuck can't we? But the movie is telling us the importance of family, the importance of including family in your life, if at all possible, if even half possible. And that's in a cockeyed way. Arnold's, the show from last year, FUBAR, that is going to have a second season. It's not great. It's okay. It kind of gets better as it goes along. Arnold is a riot. And Monica Barbaro, the actress, she was in Top Gun Maverick, who plays the daughter. She's terrific. The two of them are great together. But in that case, neither knows that the other is a spy. And it turns out they work really well together. So a little bit of a different slant, but a similar concept of family can come together in the strangest of ways. But the bottom line is they come together. And that's the important part. And True Lies, for all of the stuff blowing up, for all of the action sequences, it is a film that should leave you with a smile on your face. Now, I just looked this up before, and this is kind of a little funny. It's streaming free on Disney Plus now. I don't remember Touchstone or any Disney affiliates being involved in the production of True Lies, but it's streaming free. Well, I say free. If you have Disney, it's streaming. I mean, you have to pay for it, so it's not really streaming free. But it's on Disney right now, and it's also on Hulu. Disney and Hulu are corporate partners. So if you have either of those channels, you don't have to pay extra. And look, it's a great movie. It's not James Cameron's best. It's nowhere close. In fact, next to the Avatar films, which I never really warmed to, I put it just above those. Terminator, The Abyss, Aliens, Terminator 2. They're all better. For me, they're all better than True Lies. But that doesn't mean that True Lies isn't 3.5 stars out of 4. And a film I've seen at least 10 times. And I enjoy it every time. Cameron's ability to stage action sequences is comparable to Spielberg. That's how good that guy is. That is how polished his eye is, and his amazing ability to put these sort of kinetic sequences on top of one another. He and Spielberg, 1 and 1A, and flip a coin. And I think he's as talented a filmmaker as Spielberg, but that's neither here nor there. They both had stupendous careers. Now, Cameron's a guy who, like Scorsese, doesn't make as many movies. Spielberg has always been assembly line, like that. And everything is quality. There haven't been that many misses in Spielberg's entire career. I just can't believe it's 30 years since that day, seeing True Lies at the UA Cinema 150, which is now an Equinox Gym right off Route 135, Route 25, aka Jericho Turnpike in Woodbury. Dad's apartment was across the street at what's now called Eagle Rock. 30 years to the day, July 15th, 1994. The summer of The Mask, Forrest Gump, Maverick with Mel, and, The Lion King, which was the biggest hit of the summer. True Lies, I think, ended up third behind Lion King and Forrest Gump, if I'm not mistaken. What a great movie, right? What a great movie. This has been episode 247 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Monday afternoon here with me in New York. If you checked out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you caught this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or Amazon Music, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode sooner than you think. Until then,